Okay, everybody calm down. Actually, don't calm down. Be hype, because I know I am. I know
Yes,
Will
me
is.
too.
Because we're
Oh, yeah.
joined by our very special guy. I mean, I don't even think we can call him a guest, right? Because, like, he's here.
No.
He's our coworker, NFL analyst and podcaster, the man who does it all, has more jobs than I had growing up. Bucky Brooks in the house to help us break down all of our draft needs. Nobody watches more film. Bucky, of course, we've been focusing in on a lot of the Latino prospects, as we were just talking about Dominican Republic. Will and I have a similar experience because my dad can't watch a baseball game without specifically pointing out who the Dominican players are.
Well, that's what you do.
And I'm like, Dad, we're going to be here all day.
Yeah,
There's
that's
a
what
lot
you,
of
that's
every
what
guy
you
that
do.
comes up to the bat es a Dominicano. I'm like, I got it. So that's what we're doing now with our draft prospects. Like, oh,
Ese es
he's a Latino. Like, so let's focus in because we know the big ones, the Christian Gonzalez's, Jose Ramirez, but are there any guys that we have not been focusing on that really need to be on our radar?
So I think obviously when we're talking about the draft, we always talk about in this side, play the hits. So before we can just fast forward and move from Steve Avila and Christian Gonzalez, we need to talk about those guys because those guys could be the ones that really carry the flag
100%.
as your early round prospects. And so Avila from TCU is outstanding at the point of attack. And he has crept in contention of being like a really solid first-round pick. At TCU, when you watch him, look, he's very solid in all aspects in terms of solid position blocker. When you watch him, he's quick with his hands, quick with his feet, does a really good job of what we call jumping the defensive lineman, meaning he sets quickly, gets into them before they can get going, and he's able to win the down. He has a level of versatility where he can play multiple spots on that offensive line. And so coming out of TCU, he is arguably their highest rated prospect outside of Quentin Johnson. And so he has an opportunity to be the first off the board for TCU, but he could be a very, very solid first-round pick.
Ooh,
Maybe for the Cowboys? How about for the Cowboys, Bucky?
I mean, I'm sure the Cowboys and that fan base would be rabid. I mean, like, it would be all kinds of stuff that would be spewed. Like, that would be a great opportunity for him to be able to play. And so, look, he's terrific, but then the guy, Christian Gonzalez, will be the first one to go.
Yeah, I think so.
And Christian Gonzalez, coming out of Oregon, obviously having the ties. His sister is a very acclaimed and accomplished.
She was on the podcast here.
Yeah,
we had her on.
Accomplished track and field athlete. You then see him, though. He's tall. He's athletic. He has great instincts and awareness. He's a very versatile game in terms of being able to play press. He can play off. He has great instincts and awareness and ball skills. And he's a baller. And so because of that, you know, we've talked about him being one of the guys at the top of the board, but there's conversation that he could be the first DB to come off the board. And so when you think about that and tying in, he has an opportunity to carry the flag as well.
I love that one.
What's the best fit for him, do you think, Bucky? What teams make?
You know, it's funny
sense?
because we had a conversation today on the Move to Six podcast where we were talking about Christian Gonzalez potentially going to the Seattle Seahawks. And the reason why is because they're sitting at 5. They have really done a really good job of rebuilding their defense and their team. They bring Bobby Wagner back. They bring over Deon Bush. They have Jamal Adams dropping down in the box. They signed Jaron Reed to go and play inside. They have Draymond Jones coming. So this team is ready to pop. And you're looking at the missing piece opposite Tariq Woolen. When they were in their glory days, they had 2 big corners. They had Brandon Brown and Richard Sherman. So now you go get another 6'2" corner to play on that side. It certainly makes a lot of sense for them to go and get Christian Gonzalez at the top of the
Kobe
board.
Bryant. Kobe Bryant there
Kobe Bryant
as well.
playing in nickel. Yeah, so they have a lot of versatility. And so a team that is quietly, we didn't think this would happen when they let go of Russell Wilson. We thought they would take a step back. They've actually gotten better, and they're now putting themselves back in a chance to make a title run if they get Christian Gonzalez early in the draft.
Now we know why Pete Carroll has been taking all these selfies right around the facility in a scooter. He's living his best life. He's like, you know what? You guys can go ahead and overlook us. That's fine, because right now you're rattling off all these names. It's giving Legion of Boom 2.0.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I love this for Seattle. Ooh. Which of the prospects do you think could really have the biggest impact next year? And we have a great group, like you said, Steve Avila, Christian Gonzalez, of course, Jose Ramirez, Chris Rodriguez Jr., Nesta Silvera, who we had, and Jalen Moreno Cropper.
Well, normally, look, those first 2 guys can do it. But let's talk about the pass rusher from Eastern Michigan, because when we think about the ability to impact the game is creating turnovers. And the easiest way to create turnovers on defense is to either knock the quarterback down, to force him to throw under duress, to hit him and knock the ball loose, or to just create disruption that disrupts the flow of the game. And so when you think about Ramirez and how he plays, high motor player, electric, off the edge, nonstop when it comes to his ability, like those guys wear people out over time. And so over time, he's going to be a guy that's going to be a thorn in the side of offenses. And so he has an opportunity to have a very significant impact, even though he'll be drafted later than those other guys.
What do you make of Chris Rodriguez? He, I believe, is the second leading rusher in school history. He's a bulldozer when he's out there with the ball in his hands. Where do you think he makes the most sense? And I guess the bigger conversation goes to the value of running backs, which has been a topic of conversation, that they've been devalued. Why take one in the first round? Although I think Bijan Robinson is an absolute stud. But
and he's the only
where
name
do guys
here in that conversation?
Yeah, exactly. So how does a guy like Chris Rodriguez fit in?
So it's really difficult because the devaluation of the running back is real.
Yeah.
And it's significant. It has impacted the way that people view it. A lot of this can be blamed on Mike Shanahan and the system and what people saw them do without marquee names in terms of churning out 1,000-yard seasons. And so because of that, everyone believes that they can find a running back day 2, day 3. And so when you think about supply and demand, this year, unfortunately, there's a ton of running backs that can play. And so we're thinking day 3 is where he will hear his name called. But who knows where he goes. But there is a place in the league for a banger, a big back that has some physicality and toughness that can do all the dirty work between the tackles. It's just a matter of where do you value that in today's game, because it's a passing league and people aren't necessarily trying to play rock'em sock'em robot football. Everyone wants to throw it. And so because of that, it decreases his value on the board, even though he's a really good player.
Yeah, they don't want to play that style until they have to, right? Until they get into a position where they need to run it. Then suddenly that's all we can talk about is establishing the run game and being more physical. What I love about Bucky is he can just rattle stuff off, and it's because no one prepares like this man. Bucky, how much tape do you actually watch in a year, and how far out do you start before the
Excellent
draft?
questions. Yes, excellent questions. I want to know.
So a lot of it is like, I live in all these worlds, right?
Right.
So I live in the high school world because of coaching and because of doing a bunch of stuff with Nike. So you see a lot of these guys early. So you hear the names when they're in high school, you begin to develop relationships and those things. And then being a football junkie, a fan, you watch all these football games on Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday. You're watching all these college games. And so you begin to hear the names. And then when it's time to turn the page to really study them, you start your process heavily December, January, because you're getting ready for the Senior Bowl and the East-West Shrine and those things. And then as the Combine comes, you dig into it a little more. And now we're on. We got Path to the Draft. We're jumping on Total Access. You do Good Morning Football. Like, there are a bunch of different things, so you have to talk about them. So you're always aware, but the tape study really starts at the end of the college season.
Well, listen, Bucky, you are all over it. Obviously, you played in the league, so you know what it takes to get to that level. You're there in the high school level, and you see a lot of these players. Bryce Young was a stud in Southern California. He was in Pasadena, or from Pasadena, but then starred at Mater Dei, which is a powerhouse here, not only in Southern California, but in the U.S. Were there any signs or whispers that you were hearing about this guy and you thought, wow, this guy is going to go far? Can you tell that early what a guy can do and how far he can go?
Okay, so this is interesting because I always have to keep these guys linked together. So Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud are both L.A. guys. So C.J. Stroud is from Rancho Cucamonga. Bryce Young is originally from Pasadena but played at Mater Dei. And so Bryce Young was the bigger name coming out throughout because he's playing at a marquee program. He's playing at Mater Dei. Mater Dei has national attention and acclaim. I think they won 2 national titles while he was the starting quarterback. Wow. The funny thing is he started at a school in L.A. called Cathedral High School. Bryce Young was a freshman quarterback who they had a senior at the time that he entered school. And so they were alternate quarters with Bryce Young and the senior. So the senior, if you can imagine this, would start the first quarter and the third quarter. Bryce Young would play the second quarter and the fourth
He was
quarter.
the closer.
Wow.
On the surface, that wouldn't appear to be a big deal. But the fact that you have a freshman closing out games speaks to how he was as a ninth grader. And then he goes to modern day and becomes all everything. And so he is a guy who has been well prepared to be in the situation that he's about to embark upon in terms of being the face of the franchise and those things. He goes from modern day to dealing with the machine of Alabama. He wins a Heisman Trophy, so he's acquitted himself well as a leader, but he's also represented big brands.
Yeah.
And so if you're David Tepper and the Carolina Panthers, and that appears to be who they're honing in on, there's a level of comfort in knowing that I've seen someone deal on the big stage under the bright lights for so long that this is not going to be something that overwhelms him as the leader of our team.
Bucky, I do feel like you are more you're a little more conservative on your like rankings, right? Like you don't go out there just because you want to make a splash here, putting this guy. And I noticed that in your top 5 QBs, most recent edition, Bryce did jump up. Why was that?
So we moved him up. And so, like, I will be honest, this has always been the debate. And so my affinity for Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud goes deeper than just normal watching. They played for me at a Nike event. I had both of those guys on my team.
Right.
However, C.J. Stroud won the MVP when we won the championship. And so they have always gone back and forth. But you would think something that would be a rivalry, they're really good friends.
They are.
And so the thing about it, I've compared C.J. Stroud, the debate between C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young, to the debate that you could have maybe with the Golden State Warriors, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. One is the prototype. The other one is the performer. So the prototype is C.J. Stroud when you think about size, arm talent, attributes, all the things that you look for at the position for the last 30 years. Well, C.J. Stroud checks the box. The performer, though, is Bryce Young. Undersized, slender frame, but when you watch him play, he is always dazzled. And then when you go and think about looking for a bad game, you can't find one. The consistency that he has displayed as a player, you can't deny. And so I'm actually breaking one of my rules because normally, and I learned this from Ron Wolf, like having been in Green Bay for so long, he said, look, if you start making exceptions, you will have a team full of exceptions. But I'm making an exception for Bryce Young because he doesn't have the prototypical dimensions, but he's so good that I'm willing to bank on it because I come from a place where when Drew Brees came out, it was my first year scouting. Drew Brees was all everything. But Drew Brees, no matter what he did, we still gave him a second-round grade because he didn't check off all the boxes. And so it's still hard for me to shake those norms when it comes time to talk about Bryce Young. But I'm doing it. But, look, as much as I love Bryce Young, I could just give a glowing report about C.J. Stroud. I believe it's a rare instance where both guys are really, really good and talented. I just decided at the end to give Bryce the nod.
Well, let's continue talking about these quarterbacks because you have Stroud and you have Young, and then there's Richardson, who just is dripping, oozing talent there, and then you have Will Levis, who has a rocket for an arm. And Levis, coincidentally, according to one of our NFL Network insiders, had a visit with the Patriots. Do you see that as a place that he could potentially go, or is it just the Patriots maybe doing their due diligence?
So there are a couple different things when it comes to Will Levis. The Indianapolis Colts' interest in him at 4 is significant and real. He possibly could end up jumping C.J. Stroud as the second quarterback to come off the board, even though I don't see him as that kind of player. So we have to be prepared for that. The interest from the Patriots is also interesting, but some of this is also what teams want to do when it comes to doing their due diligence.
Correct.
Your job as the decision maker, the general manager, the head of everything is to make sure that you have dotted your I's and crossed your T's on all the prospects. Because this class is the most volatile draft class that we've seen, who knows what's going to happen and who is going to be available. There are scenarios where C.J. Stroud could be staring at the Atlanta Falcons at 8. You can say that Desmond Ridder is your franchise quarterback, but then do you bypass C.J. Stroud to do something else? And so with the Patriots, if one of these guys is sitting right there at 14, you may love Mac Jones or not. Now you have to at least have the conversation, Mac Jones, Will Levis, which one gives us the best chance over the next 5 years to be the team that we want? And so you have to have these conversations. Whether you pull the trigger or not, it is only right for the sake of the franchise that you at least bring him in and know everything that you can know about him before you make a decision, yay or nay, on whether he could be your pick.
What I love about the draft is when the panic sets in, right? Like all of a sudden you got 1, 2, 3 guys in the same position, and everyone's like, wait, no, and then there's a run on that position. I don't know that that'll happen with the QB position. Like I'm sort of the mindset that 5 guys going in the first round is a little generous.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's real generous. And let's be honest, because we talk about Will Levis and Anthony Richardson. Hendon Hooker outplayed both of those guys in the same league.
Talk about it.
Hendon Hooker has a torn ACL, but when you look at the way that they played, Hendon Hooker over a 2-year period had better numbers, was more efficient, was more effective in the same league.
Yeah.
And so if we're going to go goo goo gaga over Will Levis and Anthony Richardson, who have been less productive players, we have to at least give Hendon Hooker his flowers. And so I am just curious because coming off of last year when I felt like, and this is honest, this is what we do on TV. We play the hits. Everyone loves the quarterbacks because your fantasy teams and all of that. And so we talked about the quarterbacks, but then when it came down to it, Kenny Pickett was the only guy to go. So in this year's draft, I just wonder, are we going to talk about these quarterbacks like we talked about, and then come draft night, we don't hear them come off the board in the first round? Who are going to be the quarterbacks that slide out of the first round, if at all? To me, it just seems unlikely that all 5 quarterbacks that we've talked about throughout this are going to be first-round picks.
Right.
Because I don't know if they all grade out as true first-round picks.
Well, do you think Hooker can go to a place like the Titans?
You know, it's interesting because it's in-state. You talk about the Tennessee Volunteer, that love, and you're trying to fill out the stadium. Yeah, that's a possibility. I think it's more likely maybe the Minnesota Vikings at 23 or the New Orleans Saints at the bottom of the first round, because those are spots where you have someone who has a torn ACL. He can redshirt. He can sit for a year or two without the pressure of having to play because you have established guys in the building. I think he's more likely to go in the 20s more so than at the top of the board, even though if he wasn't hurt, he would be in that conversation.
Can I just put a hypothetical out here? And you guys may have, since you analyze every aspect of this. A team a lot of people aren't talking about a lot is the Rams. Obviously, they don't have a first-round pick. They haven't had one in what feels like an eternity, but they are high second round. Matt Stafford, there were rumors last year, potentially maybe thinking about retirement. Could you see them maybe jumping up for a guy of the future?
Well, at some point they have to get one. You know, a lot of us thought that when Baker Mayfield signed there last year, he was kind of setting the table for him to be the eventual starter when Matthew Stafford retires. He goes to Tampa Bay, so now they have a hole at that spot. So, yeah, at 36, they certainly have to entertain it. Now, I know Les Snead had that T-shirt, F them picks.
Right.
But now I bet he probably has another shirt like, please give me those picks
just kidding,
so I can run it back. You know, but
that's on the back of the T-shirt.
Yeah.
He needs some picks because they're going to need picks to be able to bring this back. So I'm really fascinated by the Rams and what they do on draft night. But really I'm fascinated by what Sean McVay does because this will require him to be at his best to be able to get this team to a competitive level with the mass exodus of blue-chip players that we've seen.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about the Malibu house or any at all this year.
Well, I mean, No, I don't know if he's been at I don't even know if they're having a
I don't
draft
think
house.
they have.
I don't think they're having a draft house this year.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Hey, Bucky, we touched upon it earlier in our conversation just about the running back position. And Bijan Robinson is unbelievable. The career that he's had at Texas, it seems like he's just one of the top prospects, period, across the board. We had Mel Kiper on Good Morning Football. He said, I have no idea where he's going to go. It feels like most people have him going to the Eagles, but that doesn't seem like that's something that the Eagles ever do or Howie Roseman wants to do. So where do you see Bijan Robinson going?
You know, it's tough because if we grade him on the talent, he's probably the 3rd or 4th best player in this draft class. Unfortunately, because he plays running back and because the noise has overwhelmed us to the point where we don't value running backs, he won't go early. I don't anticipate him going early. I think the stopping spots for him, number 8 at Atlanta, number 10 potentially with Philly, 14 with the Patriots, and then we get into the 20s. And the team to watch in the 20s, the Chargers would be a natural fit at 21. America's team, the Cowboys, at 26 would certainly be in play. And so somewhere in that wide range, that's where Bijan Robinson will hear his name, but I'm sure it's difficult for him. He has no idea when he's going to go. And I don't know if any of us can confidently say, oh, this seems like the landing spot for Bijan Robinson.
Right. It's always interesting. Yeah. Bucky, thank you so much. Such great insight
so great.
as always. We could talk to you for hours, but, we all got a lot of stuff to do. We appreciate your time, Buck. You're the best.
Appreciate your Buck.